Hi online, Counselor Castro.
Hello.
We haven't forgotten about you. I would have given you a hug if you were here.
I know. Nice to see everyone though.
We're gonna get started as soon as we go live.
Madam Chair, you are live.
Thank you. So I call to order the Quality of Life Committee meeting at 5:05 on February 21st, 2024. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Faulkner.
Here.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Present.
Counselor Castro.
Present.
Chair Chavez.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda, staff, committee members? I see no changes. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See none, motion passes. Next is approval of the consent agenda. I believe we had 2 items that were removed.
Yes.
And those items are, let me bring them up. Unless you have them in front of you.
The items are letter B, request for approval of the Law Enforcement Retention Fund notice. Pulled by Counselor Alma Castro. And item E, pulled by Counselor Michael Garcia and by Pilar Faulkner. Counselor Faulkner, sorry.
All right, thank you. And just so you know, item E that was pulled is a consideration of resolution number 2024. This is by Mayor Ellen Weber requesting approval of second quarter budget amendments for fiscal year 2024. Can I have a motion to approve the consent as amended?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Faulkner.
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Castro.
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next is our presentations, and our first and only presentation this evening is a benefits presentation. And we have Alvin Valdez, a benefits and wellness supervisor, here to present. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So good evening, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the Quality of Life Committee. Like she said, my name is Alvin Valdez, and I serve as a wellness and benefits supervisor for the city of Santa Fe. Tonight, I'm going to provide an overview of the city of Santa Fe's self-funded health insurance plan. Our discussion will encompass the plan's current performance, a retrospective analysis, and a strategic outlook moving forward. So before before getting into the details, I would like to underscore several key points about the health insurance plan. Number one, the city of Santa Fe is a self-funded health insurance plan where the city pays for employees' health care costs directly rather than purchasing policies from an insurance company. Number two, our rates are set annually based on the prior year's claims data and projected medical and pharmacy costs, ensuring responsiveness to healthcare cost fluctuations and actual utilization of trends. Plan benefits. Our premium plan, where 92% of our employees carry this coverage, features no deductibles, no co-insurances, minimal co-pays, and costs substantially lower than both local and national averages, illustrating its exceptional value. We offer superb health and wellness incentives. The city is committed to supporting our employees' health through a comprehensive wellness program. We offer an employee assistance program. We offer rec center benefits, flexible work arrangements with paid wellness days, and preventative healthcare services. Just recently, our commitment to the employee wellness was recognized with a gold level Cigna Health Workforce designation for 2023. So we'll look at the annual renewal process, which is a cornerstone of our health plan, where a thorough review of claims data and healthcare cost projections are conducted each year. They involve the HR team, Cigna representatives, Aon representatives, and the Benefits Advisory Committee, who all work together to evaluate and adjust the insurance plan as necessary. For those of you who don't know, the Benefits Advisory Committee is comprised of representatives from various city departments and unions. The committee plays a crucial role in guiding and developing the management of the health insurance benefits plan, ensuring transparency and informed decision-making. So on a final note, I just want you to all understand that this presentation is purely for informational purposes. So as we proceed with tonight's presentation, please note that our intent is to simply inform you. Hopefully, this will allow a engaging, constructive dialogue in the future. We seek your valuable feedback to ensure our health plan remains sustainable, adapts to healthcare economical changes, and aligns with our employees' well-being. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter for this evening, Mr. Todd Burley, our Aon Health Benefits Consultant. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Todd.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councilors. If we can go to the next slide, please. I want to start off comparing, as Mr. Valdez said, the city of Santa Fe's benefits are at a much higher level than both for this comparator in column C, the state of New Mexico, and column D, a benchmark nationally of public sector groups in the range of 500 to 5,000 employees. As Mr. Valdez stated, looking at columns A and B, the city does not have any deductibles in rows 1 and 2, no co-insurance in row 3, and substantially lower out-of-pocket maximums as shown in rows 4 and 5. Additionally, the copays, which are shown in rows 6 through 15, are substantially lower. For a local comparison, you can see the state of New Mexico has a $750 deductible. So that a member would have to meet that deductible before claims are paid. Above that point, they pay 30% of the additional amount up to a maximum of $5,000, which is twice what a city of Santa Fe employee would pay. And also column D, again, this is a national benchmark of public sector groups. You can see those benefits are significantly less rich than what the city of Santa Fe's employees enjoy. Go to the next slide. I want to give some history for the last 8 years now of what has occurred with the city of Santa Fe's benefit plans. On this sheet, I will work from the bottom up to the top. In fiscal years 2017 through 2019, there were no changes to either medical insurance rates or to the benefits. In fiscal year 20, an 11% increase was recommended, as Mr. Valdez stated, based on past experience and future expectations. That year, a 9.9% increase was implemented to medical rates, an 11.4% increase to dental insurance rates. Dental insurance is sufficiently funded now, and there are no changes proposed for the upcoming fiscal year. The 11.4% increase in fiscal year 20 was the first increase in at least 10 years prior to that. For fiscal years 21 and 22, increases approximating 10% were recommended, but no changes financially were made in those 2 years due to the burden on the city's employees due to COVID in every aspect of their life. There were minor benefit changes in fiscal year 2021. You can see those were increases to some copays and some limitations in the number of visits to acupuncture, chiropractor, naturopathy, and therapy services. In fiscal year 2023, an 18.5% increase was recommended. That sounds onerous, but medical trend rates have been about 6% annually. So that's really just the 3 years prior with no increase annualized and kind of making up for the 2 COVID years where no changes were made. The offer was made to either implement that increase all at once for fiscal year 2023 or to institute it over the following 2 years. Fire union opted to take the entire increase in fiscal year 2023. The non-fire union employees took a 12% increase in 2023 with the requirement that rates would increase at least 6.5% the following year. For the current fiscal year, rates were increased essentially 0.5%. So the fire union saw the 0.5% increase. Non-fire union saw 7%. That was the delayed 6.5% plus the 0.5% increase. Go to the next slide. We'll look at how the medical plan experience has been for let's focus on columns A and B if we could. Column B is last fiscal year. So you can see there are a little over 1,100 employees enrolled. That is in row 1, or about 2,500 members. Members include employees, spouses, and other dependents on the plan. And row 7, you can see there was about $21.7 million in funding for the plan last fiscal year. That is kind of an anomaly because there were three paycheck months in fiscal year 23. So that's overstated by about 800,000 as compared to a quote unquote normal fiscal year. Claims in row 10 were a little under 17 million. Fixed costs in row 11. So the fixed costs include the amount that the city pays to Cigna to administer the claims, customer service, etc. Additionally, the city has stop loss insurance through Cigna. Stop loss, what that means is the city has protection for claimants above $250,000. In that instance, the city would pay the first $250,000. Cigna picks up any additional amounts over that. So total costs were about 19.2 million in row 12, or a $2.5 million surplus, again overstated by about $800,000 due to the 3 paychecks. So far this year, we are more or less right on track with budgeting. Row 7, column A, $11 million in funds into the health fund. That includes both the city share and the employee paycheck contributions. In row 10, a little less than $10 million in claims, $1.3 million in fixed costs for a total of $11.3 million, or a minimal shortfall of $150,000. That's about a 1.2% shortfall so far year to date. Sorry, 1.4%. Next slide shows this same information just on a monthly basis. Again, the thing to point out is in fiscal year 2023, July, December, and June were all three paycheck months. There will only be 2 in this fiscal year. So revenues should be, assuming fairly constant enrollment, about $800,000 less for the whole year. The next slide, for a group of 1,000 or so enrolled employees, similar to the city, what's really going to drive the medical plan experience from year to year are the number and amount of high-cost claimants. In this situation, we chose to show any claimants above $125,000 or above half of the $250,000 stop loss the plan has. This is important because if you look at last fiscal year when there was a substantial surplus, there were 9 claimants for a total of $1.738 million in minimal stop loss recoveries. If we go over to the left-hand side of the page, already through the first 6 months, there was about 1.1 million and almost 12,000 in stop loss reimbursements. Both those numbers will grow throughout the year. In the following slide, I just really want to show what an outlier fiscal year 2023 was. You can see for the prior 4 fiscal years, the number of claimants ranged from 8 to 15. The amount ranged from 2.1 million to almost 4.2 million. So last year, the surplus was pretty much entirely driven by a lower than average number of high-cost claimants. We expect that to regress back to the mean and be more like what we've seen the prior 4 fiscal years. Next, I want to give you the unfortunate picture of where medical trends are going in the shorter term, the next 3 to 5 years. Medical trends in the past have remained around 5 to 6% for the last 5 or so years. We expect that to increase over the upcoming few years, mainly driven by, I think we're all aware of the non-healthcare inflation that has risen steeply in the last year or two. We expect that to hit healthcare, but that's not an immediate effect as it is on the overall economy. If you look at that second bullet point, essentially Cigna's contracts with the providers are usually 3 years, but anywhere from 2 to 4 years. As those come up for renewal, fortunately, they do not all come up at once. But as they come up for renewal, there is the expectation that the providers, the doctors, the hospitals, et cetera, will request substantial increases in reimbursement in the upcoming years. As I stated, fortunately, that doesn't happen all at once, but we do expect that to happen over the next few years. Employment in the healthcare sector has risen to above pre-pandemic levels. Healthcare providers are not going to hire and have additional expense if they don't assume that they are going to have the revenue to cover those additional expenses. Next slide, please. And then this is, so medical trend in its simplest form is really driven by 2 components. Price, which is the price per doctor visit, hospital stay, hospital day, et cetera. And utilization, which is the number of physician visits, number of lab tests, et cetera. What I want to show in this slide is this in past years has been closer to a 50-50 split between the increase being driven by price and utilization. Now you can see it's essentially 90% price and 1% or less utilization. So again, what's driving up healthcare costs or will drive up healthcare costs in the future is the price paid per service, not necessarily more services received by your membership. And next for fiscal year 25, based on Mr. Valdez, what we do is we look at past experience, we trend that forward, we adjust for any high cost claimants, any changes to benefits, anything else that we expect to impact medical costs in the upcoming fiscal year. Based on that, and the numerical details are in the appendix, but we project a 6.8% overall increase to the medical plan for fiscal year 25. That equates to anywhere from $7 to $19 per paycheck for employees. Overall increase to the medical budget of 1.5 million. That includes both the city share and the employee paycheck contribution. So you can see that splits 1.16 million to the city and about 350,000 to the employees. Trends we have talked about, there's just a brief bullet point or 2 on methodology, which we've talked about. Next slide. Please, thank you. So this shows for each of the benefit plans, there are actually 3 benefit plans offered to city employees. But as you'll see, 92% of those employees are in the richest plan, the premium plan. But in the third column from the left, you'll see in the blue section, biweekly change to employees ranges for the non-fire union employees ranges from $7 to $17. Out to the right in red. For a fire union employee, it will range from $8 to $19. Just for comparison's sake, the state of New Mexico, whose benefits we showed on the very first slide, are very less rich than the city of Santa Fe. They have a salary banded contribution, but in this fiscal year, their contributions for someone in the highest salary band, which is someone making $60,000 or more, of which most of their employees fall, is already paying $111 per paycheck for benefits that are substantially less rich than what the city of Santa Fe employees get. And lastly, this is the Alvin discussed much of all of these actually in the introduction. So, but again, the wellness programs, the other offerings to the city employees, probably far outweigh in any of my other clients in the state, to be honest, both in just the number of offerings and the quality of those offerings. So that completes the presentation. And open it up to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? All right. Yes, Counselor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So going over the increases, I just want to confirm something because I didn't really see it in the presentation. If I did, I apologize that I missed it. In regards to the benefits provided to employees, nothing is changing in this proposal, just the cost of services. Am I understanding that correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, that is correct. No changes to benefits at all, only to the funding of those benefits essentially.
Okay, and that's coming at the cost of 1.16 million to the city, 355,000 covered by the employees. I know that, you know, as we look at the plan and over the years, you know, there's been discussion of maybe reducing benefits. It's happened before. Definitely, I can only speak for myself. I'm not in favor of that in regards to having a competitive benefits package actually attracts employees and keeps employees versus cost savings. I think we've got to look at the cost benefit effect on our employees. And so I appreciate the folks that have, excuse me, put this proposal together, because we could be looking at a different proposal where the city's looking at saving money and also cutting benefits to employees. So thank Alvin, thank you to the team for really taking that into consideration. I guess my question is, because we're looking at this year, then there's going to be the following years, and we're seeing this trend of roughly 7%. It's increasing every year. I guess my question, and Alvin, I don't know if you might have the answer to this, or Director Salazar. How are we planning for increases in future years, given, I mean, I know we're looking at this year's budget, right? And coming up with $1 million, the question is, where is it going to come from, right? And if we're going to have this steady increase over years, is that something that's being planned for in regards to, we know that we might see this increase of roughly $1 million every year. Is that being built into any future projections for budgetary planning?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, I can't answer that question. I know that we do work with budget very closely. We also work with the Benefits Advisory Committee. So we try to bring in as many voices as possible so that we know how to approach each year. As of right now, I don't know if we have the answer to that, and Director Salazar probably would be the individual to answer that more directly and correctly. But we are aware of it. We do see the projections going. So right now, I guess the answer is, I don't know if we're planning it, but I know that we do see it in the future and we are aware of it.
Okay, thank you, Elvin. I appreciate that, and happy to follow up with Director Salazar. What I don't want us to be in a position where 3 years from now, we're having to cut benefits because we weren't properly planning to budget for it. Because as I mentioned earlier, this is what helps attract and retain employees. Once we start cutting benefits, folks are going to gravitate towards those employers that are going to take care of them and their families. And I think that is always been a kind of gold medal standard for the city of Santa Fe. We've always provided high quality benefits. It's attracted folks in the past. I've been in the public sector for nearly 2 decades, and Santa Fe has the best benefits. Well, we want to make sure we maintain that status quo and always have the best benefits for our employees and not have benefits be the reason why somebody leaves. So, and then on top of that, just thank you, Elvin, for everything you're doing in regards to promoting healthy lifestyles and healthy activities while at work. I think that's, another thing that helps retain employees is showing the care and compassion for the individual's well-being. It's not sometimes it can feel like we're in an environment where it's work, and folks are just pulverized till they leave at the end of the day and feeling crappy, where I really feel that you've implemented a process where folks can have that balance and maintain a healthy physical, I don't know what you would call it, just a healthy physical well-being and even mental well-being, and not be so drained and not feel so just crushed at the end of the day. So thank you, Elvin, for that. And I'll follow up with Director Salazar, but I'm glad to hear we're not looking at cutting benefits. And $1 million is nothing to shake a finger at in regards to, it's a lot of money, but I look at it as we're investing in our employees, we're investing in our workforce. So thank you, Elvin, and thank you to everybody involved in the process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Garcia. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Valdez and Mr. Burley. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us tonight. Good
Thank
evening.
you. Next, we're going to be moving to the items pulled off of consent. The first was pulled by Counselor Castro. Request for approval, and it's item B. Request for approval of a budget amendment resolution in the total amount of $89,957 from the NM Department of Public Safety to the Police Incentives and Police FICA funds for distribution to Santa Fe Police Department officers for retention differential disbursements. And we have Deputy Chief Ben Valdez here to answer any questions. And I'll turn it over to you, Counselor Castro.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Deputy Valdez, for being there. I had the opportunity to speak with Chief Joy today, and I just wanted to highlight how important these incentives are and that we are actively trying to recruit. I am actually having a town hall tonight about public safety. It is at the forefront of our agenda. And so I just really want to thank the police department, but also the state for allowing these funds to come through. And I don't know, Deputy, if you want to talk a little bit about how important this is for our department.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Costa, this is a huge tool that the state is assisting us with, and it's been very helpful. We've had these incentives come in. I think this will be the second or third iteration. My understanding is they're also waiting for approval for additional funds with this last legislative session to continue this program. And the great thing about this incentive in particular is it's intended to have folks that are serving with agencies remain with agencies, and they are given again, an incentive for staying. Every 5, 10, 15, and 20 years they're with an agency, they get a stipend that's issued to them for their service with that agency. And it's something that Governor Lujan Grisham helped put together and craft to kind of stop the recruiting wars, if you will, between agencies, which has been a tremendous help for us. So one thing that we have seen is there's been a little bit less of a flow of laterals coming to our agency, but we've also seen where we've been able to retain folks as well. So we see that it is working. And again, once you have those time periods in, it really benefits you for it, but it's predictable. So, you know, if you stay with an agency for that time period, you will likely be eligible for that incentive as long as it gets approved. And it's looking to be hopefully a long-term incentive that they're looking to have. Again, it's gonna be based on funding and it has to be approved each year. So by the legislature. So for us, it's really, really nice to see. I know they are also working to maybe craft something for our firefighters as well in EMS. So I think the sense that we're appreciated in public safety, both us and fire, it's really seen at our level by, again, our local leaders and also our leaders at the state level.
Thank you, DC Valdez. Counselor Castro, do you have any other questions or comments?
No, just that, and just to reassure the public and everyone that we are doing our best to recruit and to retain police officers. So if anybody is interested in applying, we do have 23 open positions.
Thank you, Counselor Castro. Do we have any other questions or comments? Counselor Faulkner?
I just have a comment. There's rumors that there's going to be a special session devoted to safety in April. So we may want to keep our eye on that. I think there's going to be more money possibly coming from the legislature and the government.
Thank you, Counselor Faulkner. That's good news. Any other comments, questions? Thank you for being here, DC Valdez. Could we get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, I see a motion and I see 2 seconds. I don't know who was first. Alma. Okay, Counselor Castro was our second. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Chair Chavez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, DC Valdez. And now moving to the next item pulled, which was item E, consideration of a resolution number 2024 to be determined. Mayor Ellen Weber requesting approval of second quarter budget amendments for fiscal year 2024. We have Andy Hopkins here to answer questions, our budget officer, and this was pulled by Counselor Garcia and Counselor Faulkner. So I don't know which one of you would like to go first. Counselor Faulkner, we'll start with you.
Thank you. One of the questions I had is in Exhibit A. There's a list of different appropriations that are moving through or that are part of this amendment. And an example is like the second item on the first page. It says from various funds, but it doesn't identify what those funds are. And there's several of these in Exhibit A. And I'm just curious why we don't list what the funds are, what those various funds are.
Madam Chair, Counselor Faulkner, those funds are listed in the first 2 columns of it, all the funds affected by that. The reason it's in several funds is that some funds, like for example, public utilities funds, are able to lodger's tax or another fund example, where they have sufficient balance in their fund and efficient operating resources to take care of these retention incentives on their own. Whereas some funds like the general fund and certain other funds, they may need some additional support from GRT supported funds such as general fund to make those retention incentives happen. So that's why you see them in various funds, and wherever you see that item, I believe it's the bulk of it is in general fund. That's where you see the 1.15 million. But you will also see it in a few other funds. For example, let me see. Don't have them.
Just like item number 2 is an easy example.
Yes, that is
General fund.
and general fund, and that is the bulk of the incentives because most of our employees are paid general.
Right. And so one of my thought process is if I were a member of the public and I saw from various funds and FY23 GRT, I would want to know what are those various funds, like, you know what they are. But I don't think the public would understand that process.
Well, Madam Chair, Councilor Faulkner, they are all listed on this resolution. So if you go farther down, wherever you see that appropriations from various funds to support retention of incentives of $1,000 for city employee, that would be the list of funds affected.
Right, I just wanted to get that on the record to help the public better understand.
For example, if I could just step in, forgive me, Madam Chair, Councilor Faulkner, where you see the last entry for item, for Fund 365, the 0.5% GRT income fund, you will see $7,000 there. That would be an example of another one funded by GRT. Going down the list here, let me see, there would be, I believe there was some, yes, you will see in the 3 utility funds as well. Fund 500 wastewater management, Fund 505 water management, Fund 510 environmental services. You will also see, rather than it saying appropriation from GRT, it says, just appropriation from available revenue for those funds. In addition, you'll also see that in Fund 213, the Lodgers Tax Fund. That's another example of a fund where the resources are in place to support this and no additional support from GRT, excess GRT is required in those areas.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Great, thank you, Counselor Faulkner. Counselor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple questions. So I'm going to jump down into subsection 2, Andy, and these are the items that hadn't been before the council before, and just not only for my clarification, but for maybe the public's clarification as well. First item I want to look at is the adjustment to rebudget remaining portion of the prior year U.S. Treasury ARPA grant for administrative expenses. And so it's my understanding that the funds should have been committed or else they would have been swept up for the act that passed last year through. And so these funds have been committed, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, that is correct. They have been committed, and this adjustment is simply because of the way that the New Mexico Constitution is written. Appropriations outside of capital appropriations for capital projects are done on a 1-year basis. So that's why this is just one example of you will see actual many cases throughout this document. For example, the line right under it, adjustment to rebudget remaining portion of a prior year NMDFA grant for purchase of senior services vehicles. These are just adjustments that we need to bring those grants into the current year budget. So because they have term remaining on them and they have unspent funding remaining in them, and we want to maximize obviously our any grant revenue that we receive. So we need to bring them into the current year so that we can continue those grants while the grant term is still in effect. For this particular one, the ARPA grant, the U.S. Treasury did allow us a substantial portion. It's a small percentage, but a large amount of money, if you will, to allow for administrative expenses, because we're talking about tens of millions of dollars that we received in ARPA funding over the years. A good portion of which was appropriated into community services, a good portion of which was incorporated into my friend Rich Brown's budgets here, as well as my other good friend Maria Tucker's budgets here. And so this amount basically allows us to leverage that money to have support with purchasing where it needs to be done, contract management, grants management, grant reporting support, and everything else that's required, which can be quite an onerous burden. And, existing staff may not have always had the capacity to do that within their day-to-day duties.
Okay. And so I don't know if you know the answer to this, and since we've got maybe the experts here as well, is this roughly $1 million going all towards administrative costs, or what is the other investment with this $1 million that's going to be made?
Madam Chair, Counselor Garcia, this portion of it, this one portion, again, it looks like a lot of money, but out of the total ARPA expenses, a lot of which have already been done, this amount is purely for administrative expenses, grant reporting, reconciliation, and those sorts of things. We have quite a bit of we're still working. My understanding is on getting the documentation together so that we can get reimbursement for these expenses. A lot of these expenses have actually already occurred, and it's just a matter of getting our ducks in a row to say, okay, this portion spent, last year, we can are acceptable under the grant to be considered administrative expenses, so we'll get reimbursement for that. And of course, to get that reimbursement in and to get the money in the right place for this to happen, that's why we need to bring the budget into place for this.
Okay, and maybe I'll follow offline because that means many more questions come to mind because I immediately thought, are we hiring new staff? But then you said time that was spent can be charged and we can be reimbursed. So maybe I'll follow up offline with, is it both of your departments that are affected? Just
Yeah,
because,
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, I think Mr. Hopkins answered the question. So we received an allocation of the ARPA funding. Some of our ARPA funding we could use for administration of the program, but the $1 million that he references is actually internal services. We have grant management. We have all the services that come with it. I forgot the number we received from ARPA, 47 million. I don't know the number is. It was a very large number. And so community development received an allocation for workforce development and business resources and recovery. And then community services and community health and safety received another number. And we had some of our own allocated funding that were used for some administration. Some of it, like what we do with public schools, we use for mentoring, et cetera. And so Director Tucker might be able to answer some of them that we did separately, but the 1 million that he references is internal city administration of this massive funds that we got from the U.S. Treasury.
right. Well, and I guess my question revolves more around the cost that's going to be reimbursed because that could be reinvested elsewhere within the city. And is there a plan with those reimbursement funds? So, because, there's many needs in our community and those can be gobbled up very quickly. And that's where didn't know if there was already a plan in place to, once we get reimbursed, this is how we're going to reinvest those resources. And if we don't know that yet,
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, let's see if I can answer this question. So the allocation we receive, we plan to spend every dollar. And it's been one of the good things we've had is that we've spent a lot more on our public school work-based learning program than we thought. So we're going to spend down every dollar. But the 1 million that Mr. Hopkins referenced, I don't know how that gets allocated. I know that it was used and it's allowed by the Treasury. The Treasury sent a 85-page guidelines of what you can and cannot do with the money. And I know that one portion is a line that says cities, in order to meet the capacity needs, can spend a portion of their allocation. So they've set aside that as a line item, and then I received something for our programs, and then Director Tucker also received something from hers. But we are planning to spend all of it down by the end of this year.
good. I'm glad to hear we're planning to spend it all down because we don't want to leave anything on the table. But I was more so interested in the reimbursement because there's two pots of funds that we're talking about. The money, the city that's incurred the expenses, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, in my understanding of this, city spent money. ARPA funds can help to reimburse some of those funds we spent, which would then give us resources from the feds to reinvest elsewhere because they're covering the costs we already incurred.
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, essentially that is correct. That is money that we spent out of cash balances, if you will, in various locations, primarily in this fund, that we can then basically pay ourselves back. With many grants, it's not a matter of it's not a matter of we get the money and then we spend it. Most often, most grants are done on a reimbursement basis. So essentially the city has to pony up the dough, if you will, on the front end, and then we get a reimbursement on the back end. So what the way to really think about this is we had to put the money out front and then we get reimbursement from it. Particularly in federal grants, it can take a year or even more before we actually get that money back. So there is a disadvantage in that we don't earn interest on that money. It can't be programmed for something else. But ultimately, the community is better off for receiving additional resources from the state, from the feds, to do these types of activities. And just to answer another question that you asked before, while this did provide some critical funding support in many areas, such as grants management to administer this grant, to my knowledge, no new positions were created specifically out of this money.
Okay.
So this was all existing staff spending overtime, spending resources from the city to administer this grant.
Okay, thank you for helping to clarify that. Let's go to move on to a net different line item, which is reappropriating unspent money to fix water lines, for lack of better words. And as many in our community attest, we've had some challenges with water lines, not only replacing that we were planning to replace, but those that broke that we weren't planning to replace. And so I guess my question is, how do we have, this is unspent money, how do we have $2 million unspent when I know, given all the work that's been done, we could have spent that plus some? So
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, those funds are appropriated year by year in the Water Division. The Water Division, actually, unlike many city funds, has the luxury of a large cash balance. In fact, I just looked it up right now. The current unaudited cash balance in the water fund is nearly $87 million. That is subject to timing and thing. The real number is probably closer to 70 million, but unlike, many of my friends over here in the dais would kill to have that kind of money that they could allocate toward one-time projects or CIP projects, if you will. In the case of this funding, this particular tranche of money was appropriated in a prior year. Often, particularly with CIP projects, we will budget the entire amount up front so the council can get an idea of what the scope of the project is. And capital projects are designed to run over several years. So you will see actually several other areas in this resolution and in any given budget resolution where we're saying reappropriation of unspent prior year budget for X CIP project. And this is just one example of it. It's never really planned that these CIP projects will be spent all in one year. The local construction economy, the limitations of staff, the limitations of the resources that we have just would not allow us to spend it all like that. It's like a housing development. Sometimes you may see some fits and starts because maybe construction materials go way up and we have to shift focus for a little bit somewhere else. Maybe we have some vacancies that we don't have sufficient resources to manage the project. Maybe sometimes it's just, some of these things have to be built sequentially. You have to build the foundation first and then the roof. And so, all going through all that process, it takes time. One of the things that you'll see actually in context is, I know you all have seen in the paper and discussed in committee and council meetings, the fact that the state has released quite a bit of grant funding for capital projects and kind of released the tap on some funding that was held up. All of that funding will be spent, but it will not be spent in a day. It takes quite a bit of time to get through that much, and it's not going to happen this year. We will, we need to, our public works staff, for example, needs to prioritize those projects to say, what can we get out the door now? What can we get built now? What maybe has to go on the back burner, either because it's, project, project segment A has to be built before it's project segment B. It's an ongoing thing, and, sometimes you might run into permit problems in project segment A. So it's like, okay, well, let's see what we can do with project segment C right now. It's a constant balancing act. Public Works in particular and public utilities, both are primary CIP funds. In my opinion, do, magical work sometimes, balancing all these, juggling all these balls at once, because it's really an area where you have to be nimble and have to make the most use of these funds, whether they're bond funded, whether they're cash funded, or whether they're grant funded. You have to really, be agile and nimble and say, okay, well, the plan was ABC yesterday, and today the plan is QRS, because ABC didn't quite work out correct.
Gotcha.
Sorry, that's a long-winded answer.
No, it's very, very helpful. And I guess my only follow-up to that is there a plan to spend the 2 million? Because if there is not necessarily a plan that we feel we could accomplish, then wouldn't it be better for us to put these monies back in reserve where interest could potentially be earned? And when there is the capacity to get the work done, we know that those resources are there to get the work done.
No, absolutely. There is a plan to spend this money, and really ongoing, every year there will be more and more lines, water lines adding to it. It's a gradual process, with any infrastructure replacement, whether it's roads, bridges, ports, water lines, sewer lines. There is always going to be a need. So there will always be, even if, a major main break happens and we've line, this line over here, had planned to wait another year on, that's what I talk about being nimble. Like, we have to move that forward because it's gushing into the street right now. And
Gotcha.
so, that moves up the priority list line just by virtue of it broke, and the other stuff can maybe hang on for a while.
Right. And I guess maybe plan is maybe the wrong word. Is there the capacity? And that's probably a question for Director Dupuy. Is there the capacity to get the work done? Because I think we can plan to replace every water main throughout the city. We've got a plan, but do we have the capacity to do so? And if we don't have the capacity to do so, what does that look like in a long-term plan, so to speak? So I'll check in with Director Dupuy about that, making sure that he has the capacity to get the work done. And if not, these are the type of investments, I think, let's put them in reserves and earn some interest, because the last thing I'd want is for us to come back with another quarterly adjustment saying, well, we didn't use the 2 million like we thought we were. Here it is again. And we just kind of keep kicking that can down the road, whereas it could have been sitting there making our money work for us, so to speak, in reserve. So,
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, if I could just respond on a couple of points.
Sure.
For example, this $2 million, I would not necessarily think of it as always that, oh, we couldn't get that money spent before, now we're wanting to spend it now. There was always a plan for long-term. There was going to be an ongoing capital improvement process. There will probably be more added to lines later this year, as staff feel they have the capacity. And on that issue, I do believe water has the capacity. I believe utilities has the capacity to build up the infrastructure in the most efficient way possible. Of course, we could hire 100 people and 100, workers and 100 project engineers to get it all done like that. But is that the most efficient use of the taxpayer resources? Some would say no. These things have to be done gradually, just by a matter of, how much money is there available? What's a reasonable use of staff resources? What's a reasonable use of the cash in the fund? And so, Director Dupuy can of course speak to that better than I can, but I would say just like the timing of projects, the staff capacity issue for anywhere, whether it's capital projects or anything else, is a balancing act. You can have, all the capacity in the world and you'll still have other bottlenecks, and then you wasted a lot of money on capacity that you're not using. So it is always a balancing act there as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then.
Oh, and one other point, sorry, I
sure.
forgot to mention. This adjustment, adding this to the budget, that money, until it is actually spent, that money is in reserves. That money is adding to our investment income in the water fund. So this merely puts it into the budget availability column, but until it is actually spent, until the money leaves the bank, that money is technically still sitting in reserves.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then last thing is more so just a request. There is a request for $5.6 million for unspent prior year budgeting for ongoing transit CIP projects. If I can just get the list of how that is planned to be spent out, especially I want, I'm interested in what's going to be impacting District 2, but ultimately I want to see across the city how it's being invested, but want to make sure I can take back to my constituents, so we're investing in District 2 in this way. So I don't know if you have that list offhand, but if not, I'm happy to.
I do.
Oh, okay.
And forgive me 1 second, the thing timed out on me while I was looking it up. I know, I remember from memory, approximately $3.6 million of that carry forward for transit is for the improvements to the downtown transit center. There are some other projects as well. Let me see if I can pull up the numbers here. One moment. And let's see, there was approximately, let's see, let me make sure I get all the lines here. It is. Okay, there is approximately, let's see, about $135,000 in remaining costs for the Camino Entrada roundabout, which was a necessary project to enable transit buses to move effectively in and out of the Camino Entrada area, and just basically street improvements to allow the buses to navigate on their existing routes. There is approximately $650,000 for ADA, Americans with Disability Act upgrades to bus stations or bus shelters, excuse me. There is another approximately $1.2 million for much needed improvements to the South Side Transit Facility as well.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. I really appreciate all the clarification on this. And these quarterly adjustments, lots gets approved in one fell swoop. So appreciate you just allowing me to kind of dig it a little deeper in regards to what we're actually approving. So thank you. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Appreciate you being here. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second. If we could get a roll call vote, please. And just for the record, Councilor Castro is no longer with us at the meeting right now. She had another scheduled event, so she is excused.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Chavez,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to our next item, we have no action items for discussion, no executive session. We are at matters from staff, so we'll start with Director Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. I have a couple of things. I have a lot of things, but I'll just mention a couple of things. From the Economic Development Department, there's a small business finance fair on the 29th at 10:30 at the JCCC. And we're also starting a Southside Office Hours program. And that's going to start on March the 1st at the Business Incubator from noon till 3 p.m. And that same day, it's a busy day, but that same day, we are partnering with the Center for Responsible Entrepreneurship with the UNM University. And there's a talk, there's a gentleman, his name is Chef Chad Hauser, and he had a national program where he trained prisoners who have come out of prison, and he's done a sort of a food industry training program, and he's bringing that to the city. He's going to talk about how that works, and we are trying to do that here in Santa Fe. There is a Chef Fernandez who's also trying to do this work, so we're having a webinar about it and how we can look at this as a responsible entrepreneurship program where restaurants can work through this capacity that they need using our prisoners who are coming back into the regular population. So that's happening on the 1st at, it's going to be at Christ Church on the 1st at 4:30. And then on the, let's see, so another thing was the city wage increase is increasing to $14.60, and it's effective March the 1st, and it's a 4.05% increase from last year. And that also, the Arts and Culture Department had mentioned that the NEA has art research grants that are out now, and they close on March the 25th. So National Endowment for the Arts is NEA, if you want to check that out. And then on the tourism side, we're working with the airport on the renovation. It's on track for a March 16th open house that we're going to send out invitations to. Additionally, working with Sky Santa Fe or Fly Santa Fe, there is United is launching a Houston flight that starts on March the 9th. We are also, they've asked me to talk about USA Today's Readers Poll, the 10 Best Readers' Choice Award, if you read the USA Today. And then lastly, in arts and culture, we hired a new gallery manager, and he started today. His name is John Dickinson. So he has started today. And then on Saturday, we're having a poet laureate reception, our new poet laureate. We have a reception at the community gallery at 2:30 p.m., sorry. And then lastly, in celebration of Black History Month, the Arts and Culture Department is doing a poetry and music celebration at the gallery on the 29th, starting at 5 p.m. So lots of things going on.
Lots of things. Thank you, Director Brown. I appreciate it. Director Tucker?
You, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Just a few updates. Thank you so much for approving the age-friendly resolution that came before you this evening on consent. We're looking forward to moving that through the committee process and committing to becoming a more age-friendly, livable community for people of all ages in Santa Fe. So thank you for that. Also, just to announce on March 5th, they're going to begin the construction of the expansion of the Mary Esther Gonzalez Center, Senior Center. So we're excited to see that project moving forward and providing more activity space for our seniors, which Senior Center is always bustling. Director Sanchez in Youth and Family Services is happy to announce that she has offered positions to two program managers for homelessness and community violence prevention. So hopefully we'll have some new staff to introduce soon and continue all of this work that we're doing in the community. And so we're excited to hopefully have some new hires there. We also received word, I just received word yesterday that we received a CASA Connect grant from the state for $2 million to support housing and homelessness issues. So we will be working, Director Sanchez and I will be working on how we're going to move that project forward. So lots going on in our department. Family night at the Teen Center once again on Friday. It's so fun. Stop by and visit and just check it out. The family nights have been so popular, and so it's just great to see the teens wanting to share the beautiful center with their families. So stop by. That starts at 5:30. We will also still host teen nights throughout March, April, and May, and they're going to rotate from the Teen Center and the Chavez Center. So we're going to have different opportunities for our teens. Also, we're continuing to recruit for lifeguards. It's one of my biggest focuses, how we can get more people swimming this summer, and summer is upon us. So if you know anybody who wants to take the classes needed to become a lifeguard, we're going to offer 3. First one being a spring break, and then we will have some trainee positions opening soon, so be on the lookout for that. If you know anybody who would like to train to be a lifeguard, it's a great job, and we need more lifeguards at our pool. So please help us spread the word, and it'll be on the website. That's a few of the things we have going on.
Thank you, Director Tucker. I imagine we're recruiting at the high schools for lifeguards with the visits we've been getting.
Lifeguards and our youth programs. We're
Awesome.
hiring for youth programs.
Great, and great to hear that we're gonna have new team members join, so that's good news.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Apodaca or Ms. Olgain, anything to share tonight?
No, just everyone, thank you for being patient in my learning process. And I couldn't be more grateful for Loretta to stay on and help.
No, thank you for being part of the team now. We welcome you. So thank you for being a part of this. Loretta, you're amazing. As always, I'm glad I was able to see you tonight. How long will you be tagging along? Okay,
At least a few more.
a few more. Okay, so we'll be having Loretta with us a few more times. So that's a great news as well. All right, so I think that is everything from staff. Next is matters from the committee. Are there any matters from the committee? Counselor Faulkner?
So it seems like the mayor's council, youth council is not very diverse. And so most of the kids in the city live in my district. And so it'd be nice if we could figure out some way to diversify that council. So it was more representative of the entire city. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor Faulkner. And next is matters from the chair. So I'll actually talk to you about, I'm going to be working on actually addressing that, Counselor Castro and I. So if you are interested in working with us, I'll loop you into that, okay? The only other matter is our next meeting, which is Wednesday, March 6th, 2024. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a